All right, guys, last example. I'm trying to keep these modal pieces short and the modal lessons short because ultimately there's 7 modes. So we're going to do 7 of these lessons, 1 per week for 7 weeks. And at the end of that, I think through comparing the different fields and the different sort of impressions you get from each mode, you'll really have a functional understanding of what modes sound like what, when to use which modes, and not only how to sketch monophonically in those modes, but also how to do chord progressions. When we're done with all 7 modes, then I'll wrap up with the 8th lesson, which is going to be modal interchange, specific ways to use modal interchange, moving out of traditional minor into, for example, Dorian for a moment, or Mixolydian for a moment, or Phrygian, or Locrian, whatever it is, just to add spice to existing compositions. Since I've learned this, I often go back and I take progressions that I wrote years ago, and I just substitute one chord for a modal interchange, and it adds like a whole new flavor, which is a very cool way. It's also a cool trick to do in remixes, because you often get a guy who doesn't know any modes. So he's got like 4 chords and they're all in Aeolian, and I'll just choose one of them and flip the mode of it. And it doesn't really upset the tonality, like it still works with the vocals or whatever elements I'm remixing, but just adds that little bit of spice and flavor and sophistication to the composition. Cool. All right, so let's look at this. I've got a mono line here, which is kind of in like an organy sound. I only want to play the first 2 bars. Quite naughty, quite disco-y. I could picture this on like a game or like Beverly Hills Cop, quite 80s as well. I really like it because it's got this sort of funkiness to it that the flat 7 brings, but the openness, the happiness of the major. Okay? So that's it, nothing fancy going on, just standard intervals, C in the root, and I've used the flat 7 because it's the differentiator key. Okay, cool. So if we just hear that with a bit of bass. Okay, let's put some drums in there. Okay, now you could argue that there is the start of a chord progression just in this bass line, where every time that I change root notes in the bass line, that could be the root note of a chord that's yet to be formed. So if I look at that, you can see I've done that over here, by the way, surprise ruined. But for example, if I look here and I said, cool, I want to chord this. So now I need to go to this note, A sharp, and I say, okay, how do I chord this? And that's obviously explained in the chord progression theory, where we know that A sharp is going to be major. It's going to be A sharp, D, and F. If we play F, which is the 4, that 4 chord is going to be major. So it's FAC or FACE. If we play 5, we know that the 5 chord has to be minor. And again, I'm returning to the chord theory here. You can see this is all laid out. The 5 chord is minor. So it's got to contain the minor third, which is B flat or A sharp, which again is in the key signature. So that's why it has to contain it. Okay. So using that logic, if I want to write a chord series, I sort of take these notes. I start making chords here on the A sharp, and I've done exactly that. I've said, all right, A sharp, F, and D, but I've left the D out. So I've just gone A sharp, F, and A sharp. And then here's a 2 chord. Now I know the 2 chord has to be minor, because if I refer back to my chart, it'll show me the 2 chord is minor. So the standard chord is DFA, the 7th chord is DFAC. I think I've used the 7th there. So we go back, we'll see that on top of D, I've stacked F, A, and A sharp. So I'm playing D minor 6 there. So you don't have to play the exact chord as long as it follows the modal information. All right, and then here's C, and I would have played C Mixolydian, which is 1, 3, 5, flat 7. Okay, so if we listen to that, soloed, it's got quite a cool sound. Very jazzy, very funky, very unusual. And what makes it so unusual is this hybrid sound that it has. It's very majory, but it has the funk, the openness, the epicness, and the complexity of the flat 7. I really like this one. This is my favorite. I'd probably finish this. Okay, and again, if I want to write lead, not that I really want to write lead, but if I do, I just stick to this key signature and I can use anything. So let's do a little run. Okay, it's got, no matter what I do with it, it has that Mixolydian sound as long as I stick to the key signature. And of course, from a sound design perspective, I really thought it would be cool to just have this delay, sort of automating time. Okay, gotta be on time. There we go. Very cool. What I found also with this mode, for some reason, is that it responds really well to pianos, like funky kind of piano riffing. Very jazzy sound that it gives you on the piano, and those pianos always sound good when they filtered. I actually had this in a keyscape, but I don't have keyscape on this machine. And it sounded so good through like a grand piano. And then just filtering, just using simple high resonance filters, just to sort of create that like filter house sound, that like funky house sound. Yeah, really like it. Here's the chord. Okay, so that took about 20 minutes for us to just work out the intervals, which again, if you want to work out the intervals for any mode, I've put them all in that chart. I work out the intervals. I know that, for example, Mixolydian is C, D, E, F, G, A sharp, and C, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat, 7, 8, okay? I can use that key signature however I want to create riffs. If I want to chord it, then I've got to extrapolate the logic of how to form triads or seventh chords based on the intervals of those scales. So one last time, when I look at that chart, I can see that the 1 chord must be major, of course. The 2 chord is going to be minor. The 3 chord is going to be diminished. That's massively important. Now, I don't have a 3, an E in the root, but I can put a little phrase in there. Let's just do one here. I'll put an E over here. And I will chord that E. Let's actually put it here. I will chord that E, and when I chord it, it must follow the rules. So let's go E diminished. Oh, that's really cool. Oh yeah. Really like that. I'm going to just copy that over to the other. So that's how the chord progression chart can sort of inform you and make sure that if you're chording notes, which is such a cool style with this, you see this is not really a chord progression. It's kind of like a pedal board voicing for Mixolydian. There's very little variation away from C in the bass, but there are just little flicks of other chords, and those chords are following the chord progression rules as laid out, okay? So again, this is only one mode. It's a very rare mode. I've actually never written a song in Mixolydian. This little sketch is probably the closest thing to a functional sketch I've got for an actual song in this mode. I've used Dorian a lot, and I'm using Phigrian a lot as well. But, sorry, excuse me. What I would do with Mixolydian is just this kind of thing, like an opening track to a live set, or like an intro to a really complex ambient album. Something unusual, something that's not going to be like the biggest hit of your life, but it's just a cool, functional little different song, okay? And yeah, that's pretty much it. That is C Mixolydian, everything that makes it special, everything that makes it unique, and hopefully between the Coldplay, the orchestral piece, that first little breakbeat thing we did, and this, you've sort of got a wide enough idea of all the ways in which we can use this in terms of practical use in music, from film score, orchestral, all the way through to sort of filter housey sort of music. All right, and that is mode 1 of 7. I know I started with Mixolydian because we're not doing these in linear order. We have in the next few weeks to cover Lydian, Ionian, Dorian, Aeolian, Phigrian, and Locrian, and I will try to do between a 45-minute and an hour class on each one, and guaranteed you won't like all of them. Not each person is going to want to use each mode, but even if you only expand your musical vocabulary in this series with 2 or 3 modes that you really like and that you resonate with, that gives you the opportunity to write either complete modal pieces like we've done here, or to use modal interchanges where you just step out of traditional minor or major for a while and you just drop one of these modes in to add interest to a particular section of the song. Okay, guys, so that's Mixolydian. As I upload this, I will upload all of these MIDI files, including audio, MIDI, and the Ableton files for all of these songs. Probably never going to work on them, so if any of you want to finish them and send them back to me, maybe we can talk about putting on the label or putting on a comp or finding a label for it. I'd really love to hear what you guys come up with the Mixolydian scale. Happy music making, and I'll see you again next week for Modal Lesson Part 2. Ciao!